Good morning. This is Tona of Nurses Speak, and welcome back to our channel for nurses, where we talk about anything. And today's topic is about travel nursing, and I have Eliane with me to discuss her experience as a travel nurse in the US. And I will allow Eliane to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Tona, for inviting me today. And hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Eliane. I have been a nurse since getting out of school at age 18 and have worked in early days in hospitals as a med-surg nurse and went into education for OR nursing, but then actually changed some things in my life, and I went briefly out of bedside nursing into more administrative jobs, like working as a project manager for, back then when the internet boom started, I did project management for a company who worked with pharmaceutical companies and doctors to build portals for clients to talk about different diseases, like the current WebMD as an example. It was something similar to that. And then I did some home care, I did hospice, home hospice, and I actually met Tona in New York City when I was working for a home care company in the quality management department. And after that, I decided to go back to bedside nursing. Actually, there was a hurricane and I was helping out in the shelter, and I realized how much I missed bedside nursing and the contact with patients. So I decided to go back, went back into hospitals. And even though there was quite a period of time where I was out of bedside nursing, it had to get a little bit time to adjust to it, which then led me to travel nursing because I always loved traveling. And I thought, my husband and I were talking, oh, once we retire, we want to travel there and here and there. And then it suddenly hit me, you could die anytime. I could die today. Why are we putting this off until we retire? Why don't we just do it now and try to find a way to work while we travel? And travel nursing is ideal for that. So that's the story.
Okay, so it sounds like you made an intentional plan to try travel nursing. Now, I know you're based in Florida now. At the time when you were traveling, did you also work in the state of Florida, or did you go to other states?
I worked in Florida in 3 different places. I worked in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I worked in New York. Yeah, as a travel nurse.
Great. Now, did you find that the agency you worked with, were they easy at facilitating you on these assignments and assisting with your travel needs, housing, and license requirements?
Yes, it depends which agency you go with, but most of them will help you with definitely the licensing. Every state has their own licenses, except there are certain states. Okay, let's put it this way. There are certain states, which is the minority of states, who need their own licensing.
Right.
The majority of states do have a compact, they call it a compact license agreement. So certain states are within that compact agreement. So Florida is one of them. Nevada was not one of them, so I had to get a specific license for that. But depending on the state, it takes a few weeks to a few months to get it. Like California is known to be the most difficult and most expensive to get a license for, and it takes the longest to wait for that. So if you're planning to go to California, plan ahead a long time ahead, like a half a year. I
Oh,
don't know right now
wow.
the situation, but with the pandemic, I'm not sure if they changed certain requirements. But yeah, you have to read up each state what the plan, the
Mhm.
policy is, make a
Right.
plan for it.
Now, what
And
is the agency's role, though, in helping you to get those license? I mean, is it a matter of you just choosing where you want to go and then doing the application yourself for the license, or how is the agency involved in facilitating that process?
well, they can help you get to the right website to apply for it. The things they help you behind the scenes, but the application itself you have to do yourself.
Okay. Okay. Now, was your choice of locations based on the places that you wanted to go visit to live in? Or, was it pretty like based on what the assignment was paying?
Well, back then when I started, I started 6 years ago, and back then there was no pandemic, there was no pandemic pay. The travel nurse made just a little more than a regular staff nurse. So it was, yes, there was some differences in states of how much they paid, but for me, it was, where do I want to go? There was a shortage everywhere back then already. So you pretty much could tell the agency, hey, I want to visit whichever state. Do you have anything? And they most likely did and still do. And then you can, say, you look at the different options and you get some details about where it's located at, how much the salary is going to be, how long the assignment is going to be for, which department, which unit. And then usually the process is pretty quick and easy. Some hospitals, there's in such dire needs currently that you don't even get an interview. They just hire you on the spot. Some hospitals, you get an over the phone interview with one of the managers at the hospital, which is usually quick and easy too. So yeah, and then once they offer you the position, it goes within hours. You sign that contract, and within however many weeks ahead you get assigned for it, then you pack your things and you go. And contracts usually are, currently with the pandemic, it can be 8 weeks. Usually they are 13 weeks long. And orientation, your question was orientation. That's a very good question. And the reality of it is some hospitals give you a few hours of orientation. And if you're lucky, you get 3 days. There's no more than 3 days ever in the history of travel nursing that I experienced. So
Okay.
that's why the requirement for being able to travel as a nurse is you have to have at least 2 years of hospital bedside nursing experience. If you
Mhm.
don't have that, honestly, a lot of nurses try, especially now with the good pay through the pandemic. Oh, I only have 1 year experience. Do you think I could do this? You know what? Don't even don't even think of it, because you're being thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, you
You
basically have to hit the ground running, right? So
not just
what about
run, you have to like run so hard like never before.
right, right. So what about nurses, let's say, who may have not been working at the bedside for maybe, I don't know, 5 or more years, but they have had that experience. It has to be recent experience. Is that correct as well?
That is
Because I
correct.
saw even during the pandemic, there was a lot of talk in the media about even asking nurses to come out of retirement, like it was that bad that they were willing to work with nurses who had been nurses for a long time, who had retired, still licensed, but not actively working, and asking them to come return to the workforce. So is that something you think would be workable as a travel nurse for a nurse coming out of retirement, or were they opposed to that as well?
To be honest, I have been out of travel nursing for a year now. So
Okay.
actually, no, I'm sorry, for half a year. I I, I quit last summer,
Mhm.
and now it is March. Um, so I don't know what the current situation is, but back then, yes, they did offer that. But honestly, unless you have done this job for many, many, many years and you still know exactly how it's done, it is really just, let's put it this way, this job is hard enough as it is.
Mhm.
And with the pandemic, there was a staff shortage like never before. A lot of nurses quit because they couldn't deal with it. Everyone was overworked, overstressed. There was no breaks. There were way too many patients per nurse for at least for Florida and for New York that I experienced. So the work situation, the condition was already extremely hard. And if you're not exactly on top of everything and know what to do, you are just struggling from the beginning till the end of your shift. Do you want to do that to yourself? That's the question.
Right. Because the curiosity I always had was, if everybody's got a very high patient assignment and, people's acuity level is changing by the minute, right? Then I'm thinking, well, how were you able to acclimate yourself to, where resources are on your unit, where supplies are? How do you work with different equipment? Because I'm pretty sure every facility uses different equipment. So, one IV pump is not the same as another, right? You got to learn about all the bells and whistles and functions, right? So how quickly were you able to adjust and adapt to those changes and master them, successfully in order to provide safe patient care?
Good question.
I have good questions. I have the real questions that people want to know about. I mean,
There you go.
right?
So
This is what we talk about on Nurses Speak, the real thing, the real deal.
real deal. Well, let me tell you. Well, it's up to you to make sure that the first day you're there, you stay longer and you make yourself familiar with the supply room. You go through every single shelf and make sure you know where what is. However, as a travel nurse, you're usually not just working on the assigned units. You are their resource to be used for any staffing shortage. And in your contract, usually it says, yes, you're hired for, let's say, the cardiac unit, but you will be assigned as needed to other units.
So you could
So
basically be floating.
absolutely, you will be floating 100% to places you never wanted to work before, or you have no idea what's, it's, as I said, you're being thrown to the wolves in most places.
Okay.
However, make yourself familiar. It's up to you. First day, make yourself familiar with everything, where everything is, because there is no time during the shift to ask your colleague nurse, hey, can you help me find this? That nurse has no time to help you find anything.
Mm,
And
right.
I'm
They're in their own predicament.
exactly. I mean, there's very nice people out there who try to help, but everyone is at their limit of safely managing their patients.
Okay.
And I'm saying safely because there's only so much you can do. If you have too many, if the ratio is too high, what is the safe ratio? I'm
Right.
not going to say anything to that. I'm just putting that question mark out there.
Yeah, because it's basically a crisis situation, that you're working under, right? I mean, it's been all over the media that these were some epic proportions of difficulty that the healthcare providers have been under. And I'm curious too, as about in terms of, what was your schedule like? Were you working 8 hours, 12 hours? How many days off did you get between shifts?
So if there's a need, like currently, there's 12-hour shifts usually at most hospitals, 12-hour shifts. You're either hired for day or night. And then because they have such a shortage, they also have the manager of the unit will usually have the schedule and say, hey, if you want to sign up to additional shifts, please do so. The good thing for travel nursing, and I guess for staff nursing too, is you get more money if you do more shifts. Like after a certain amount of hours, if you exceed that during the week, you get more pay, usually like 1.5.
Okay, so overtime.
Right.
Okay.
So if you want to make a lot of money, you can work 7 days a week if you want, but can you physically and emotionally and spiritually really do that?
Right.
Good
Right.
question.
That's a good, and that's where, it requires an individual self-assessment to say, to yourself, what can I really manage and still be able to keep my practice level where it needs to be, right?
I'm not
So,
burnt out.
yeah, exactly. So, did you find that it was easy to communicate with the regular staff there? Was there an assigned unit manager that you could really discuss things with? How was the
Yes.
communication between staff and travelers?
Well, it totally depends, Tonya. Some places they're so lovely, so nice, so kind. They're so grateful that you're there because they are all overworked and they're so grateful that anybody would come and help.
Mhm.
And the reality is some places they're, if they have been a team together for quite a while and you're about the only, or maybe two other people who are the travelers, the team spirit, it's almost like in high school, we love each other and you guys, you just hear, okay, whatever. So maybe you get a hello in the morning, maybe not. Maybe they talk to you a little bit, maybe not.
Mm,
But you're not there to make friends anyway. So
right.
if you're if your goal is to travel, to enjoy some time off between assignments while you travel, that's what I did. I worked for 3 months assignments, then I took 1 to 2 months off in between to travel to the next spot, work another 3 months, etc. If that's your real goal, you're not there to make friends. You just
Right.
go there, do your job.
And you keep marking off the days on the calendar. So when your 3 months is up, that's it. Time
There
to
you
hit the road
go.
again. Oh, well, at least it's short term. So, you have that goal in mind. I think that helps, because you're not in a situation where you're locked into these what do you call it? Unwelcome dynamics for too long, right? Okay. So I could understand that, sure. Yeah, and every organization has a different culture. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I have to say
Yeah.
there's certain hospitals, their culture is really lovely. Like they're very fair.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone rotates. Let's say you have to rotate to another unit. Everyone floats. Like they assign traveler or staff, it doesn't matter. We rotate. Other places, no, it's always you, the traveler, who has to rotate. So it really depends.
Right. So
And
basically, as a nurse, you have to really be diverse, in your skill set, and also feel comfortable with change, because it sounds like rapid change is something that, if it's difficult for you to deal with, traveling might be a difficult choice if you make that choice to try it out. And it may impact your success at being able to do that. Would you say that as well?
100%.
Yeah.
You have to be confident in what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing without hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be extremely flexible. You can be assigned in the morning for med surg. In the afternoon, you go to the ER for ER hold if you're not an ER nurse. Or you can go and help out at the PCU, or suddenly next day you're in the psych ward. I mean, it's really the good
Okay.
thing is that do not, like if you're a med surg level nurse, they're not going to assign you to something you're not
Right, like
certified.
you wouldn't be in obstetrics if you're a med-surg nurse.
Correct. And
Got
you
it.
wouldn't be in the ICU because that's just not your knowledge base. But within the same level of knowledge, they throw you anywhere.
Okay, got it. I see. All right, so that's interesting to note. Now, I have a question about malpractice coverage. Did you carry your own individual malpractice coverage? Okay, and did the agency also provide coverage as well? How does that work?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
But as the agency, are you a independent contractor or an employee of the agency?
No, you're a contractor.
Okay, got it. So at the end of the year, you'll get 1099.
Yes.
You have to pay out your taxes after. Okay, God, that's good to know too. Because I mean, obviously, if you're going to be paying your taxes after the fact, that requires some savings, right? You got to put some savings aside to pay Uncle Sam.
Yeah, no, I think it depends actually. Certain agencies, you're a staff,
Mhm.
but you can, you can, the contract, you can quit the contract anytime you want,
Okay.
or they can quit the contract anytime you want with some stipulations. But I think it depends on the agency. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Okay. Okay. And how did you find the housing accommodations? Tell me about that, because it sounded, you said you were traveling with your husband, right?
Yes.
Okay, so two questions about that. How did you pick your location for housing? Um, was it fully covered by the stipend from the agency? And how accommodating was it for you and your spouse to travel together?
Okay, so this is how it works. Well, what's the first question? How did you
Well,
find
how did you choose your housing? You know, how was that selected? Did you have a choice or was housing designated by the agency?
Okay, then let me start with this first. The way the contract works is the 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 pay that eventually gets into your bank account is split in certain ways.
Mhm.
One is the hourly pay, one is the stipend for housing,
Okay.
and then, and don't quote me on this because again, it's been a while, and oh, and then you get some incentives for travel to the next place, etc. But the housing part, you get that only if you don't take the agency's housing. So I chose always to use to look for my own housing. And yes, it did cover pretty much the same amount of how much the location costed, or the rent in the location was. And how I chose that was like in Las Vegas, as an example, we just looked at the map, Google Map, how far away would we want to travel every day to the hospital, and which areas. We looked up. City Data is a good website to look up, criminal location data to see how many murders, how many car accidents, how many whatever. So you can see about which area of the city is in a safer area than the other. So we looked at that, and then basically just searched for, in Las Vegas itself, we had a, what's it called? Like a long-term rental hotel room. How do you call it? Long stay.
Oh, a long stay hotel. Yes, I'm familiar
But
with that.
it was not like a real hotel room. It was more like a studio.
Well, yeah, like a studio apartment.
Correct.
Okay.
So we rented that, which worked out perfectly. And so we had that for 3 months. So you signed the contract per month. And then in New York, I did an Airbnb that was
Okay.
half an hour from the hospital. In a I worked in different places in Florida. At some point, we lived in an RV, so we traveled with a travel trailer, and we lived
Oh,
on a
wow.
campground in the travel trailer, which was fun.
Okay.
And there, actually, you can also sometimes, if you like the place, you can extend your contract if they have need for that. So there we stayed 6 months instead of 3 months.
Mhm.
In Orlando, I did also Airbnbs, and in West Palm, I did Airbnbs.
So you find that the stipends, the housing allotment for the travel assignment was sufficient to cover the cost of your rentals while you were traveling. Okay, that's great. That's good. And that's separate from the rate you were paid as your salary, right? As your
Well, just hourly pay, yes.
hourly pay, right? The hourly pay. Okay, wonderful. Now, what about the cost of traveling from one assignment to the next? How is that covered? Is that on your own or do they compensate for that?
It depends on the agency and the contract. One more thing I have to say about housing. The IRS requires for you, if you have a travel nursing contract versus a local contract, for travel nursing, you're required to have a home base that you pay every month, 12 months of the year, like your house that you own or the apartment that you rent. You travel to a location, you pay there as well for however long you're going to be there. So the IRS requires you to pay to housing. Okay.
Okay.
So that's why some staff nurses don't realize that. Some staff nurses can be a little jealous, especially in the last couple of years since the nursing travel rate increased so much. Staff nurses could be very jealous and kind of, anyway. But they didn't realize that, yes, you get more money, but you also have to pay twice for housing.
Right. So basically you have to keep your primary residential address in the state where you reside and pay taxes there, right? If it's a state tax. And also you pay for your housing while you're traveling.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. So obviously your bills at home have to still get paid. Your rent or your mortgage or your utilities, whatever, your situation is, that all still has to be maintained.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, that's something to consider as well. But then again, I mean, how does it work? Let's say you spend some time in the RV. Was your RV rented or do you own the RV?
We owned the RV, but we had to pay for the campground. So the campground fee per month was the second housing rent while we still paid our
Your primary residence.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it, got it. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of working as a travel nurse. I know up to now we've had a more generalized conversation of what it's actually been like. But from your experience, what would you put as a pro to working? And then you can discuss, the cons of it as well.
Well, the pros are, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, everyone has different views, right?
Sure.
I would say for me, first thing is travel. I can travel, I can see places I would probably never go and visit otherwise, because like, especially if you choose, outside of the touristy places. I don't know, you love the countryside, you love mountains, you can go to Wyoming or Montana or Colorado. You love the ocean, you go either coast, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's fantastic. You can go, you can see places, experience the local scenes while you make money. Perfect. And again, you can take time off in between assignments and just travel.
Okay.
And you couldn't do that if you would be a staff nurse and have only 4 weeks a year vacation, right?
Right.
So that's number one for me. Number two, just what I basically touched on, you are a staff, you have a schedule like a staff nurse for 3 months. After that, you can do whatever you want until you get your next schedule that you sign a contract for. So the flexibility of it I love it, you know. My cousin's wedding, as an example, hypothetically, oh, my cousin's wedding is in May. As a staff nurse, if you are not there long enough and somebody else already has the May spot, you can't go to that wedding, right? As a
Right.
travel nurse, oh, but I'm going to end my contract and I'm going to take time to go to that wedding.
Sure.
So the flexibility is fantastic.
Okay.
Yes, currently the pay is fantastic. You can save quite a bit of money if you're, you know, if you find housing that's not too expensive. You know, as I told you, I rented Airbnbs. There's very expensive Airbnbs. There's less expensive Airbnbs. If you're good at money management, you can save a lot of money currently. Positive. You get to know so many wonderful different people, different cultures within the states, different states of America. People are different in Vegas than they are in New York. They're different in
I can imagine.
Oregon than they are in Florida. So you get to experience the different flavors and the different cultures. It's lovely. And you make friends if you want to. You make a lot more different people. You meet a lot more new and different people because you go to different spots and you make friends, and suddenly you have friends everywhere in America.
Right, right. That's true. Yeah. I could see
Or
that working out.
positive, you don't like the team you're working with. Hey, in 3 months, I'm going to have a new team. I don't have to stick with that team. Or you don't like the hospital food and you want to eat there. Next assignment, maybe the hospital food is better. I don't know. And also, if you're somebody who doesn't like monotony, you live in a new place every 3 months if you want to. That's great.
Okay.
Negative. A lot of people who have children and family, I think the most on top of their negative list, how do you say that?
What, having to leave their children and family?
Yes, having to leave them, they miss them, they're
Right.
not around. Like
Because you
some,
have to have a caregiver for your children if you're gonna leave for 3 months, right? I mean,
right,
that could be a challenge.
that's a big challenge. Uh, it's added stress, you know, being lonely. You get lonely, that's definitely true. You don't, yes, you can Zoom or you can Skype with family, but you can't hug them. It's just, it's not the same level of connectedness, right? So that's definitely something. It is very, very, very stressful to be thrown into a new environment every 3 months. And it takes, you asked before, I didn't answer that question. It takes, to me, it took about 3 weeks, 4 weeks to be really comfortable in the new hospital that you work at. So a whole month you're uncomfortable and struggling and trying to accommodate into the new situation, and then you have 2 more months before you're leaving to the next one. So that is stressful. The like frequent floating to different units is very stressful. The higher ratio of patients, super stressful. If you're not lucky enough to get into a great team and you have nurses who don't support you, who don't talk to you, who, you know, you're not part of their team, it can be emotionally very stressful. Negative is in, you know, if you, there's, I don't know what else to list, but negative is, it is exciting to have different environments every 3 months. At the same time, it's very not stressful, but yeah, it can be very stressful if
Can
you
be
have.
stressful, even if it's an exciting stress.
Exactly. It's a good stress, but it's stressful to travel again. It's stressful to, oh, where is the grocery store here?
Right.
Where is the laundromat? Where is whatever? It takes
Yeah,
time to.
because you're going into another unknown situation.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tiring, it's because it's always so much to process. It can be very draining.
Yeah.
Draining is the word I was looking for.
Yeah. It sounds like, with you doing it with about a month or so in between assignments, kind of sounds like a good thing in terms of giving yourself time to decompress and recover from the experience. Because, I mean, whether we want to label it as trauma or not, that is a stressful and traumatic experience. As you said, those first few couple of weeks in a new place, and you don't know, what type of reception you're going to receive, and then the constant floating, that's psychological trauma on top of the high patient load that you have. So
Here's another one that I forgot, and I think that's pretty important. If you're not there for a long time, you don't know the names of the doctors.
mm,
Everyone else knows. So you have a patient who has a problem. Yes, there's the RRT team, yes, but what if it's the specialty doctor who needs to be called right away? You have no clue who to call. You have to go search in the system. Sometimes the computer systems are not very good at showing you which doctor is what. You have to go through each single note to find who wrote the note. Is that the primary doctor? Is that the secondary doctor? Is that the specialty doctor? It's horrible.
mm.
That's very
And if
stressful.
you're in a teaching hospital, you're dealing with multiple residents too, right? I mean, they're also involved. And in different shifts, you have a different resident that's working, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I totally get everything you're saying. Sure. I mean, you had to be on top of your game, like really. So if you were on a med surge unit, what would your typical assignment be? How many patients would you be given? Let's
Uh,
say basic typical med surge or medical,
well,
whichever.
it depends. In the state of Nevada, like in California, they have a max ratio that is legally
Right.
allowed. So there it was
Okay.
five
That's on
patients
a day shift or nights?
day shift.
Day shift. So for the 12 hours you worked, did you do 12 hours? You had 5 patients, and that was the max. Now, did you find that to be fairly manageable?
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that sounds good. I was like, 5 patients. Wow. That's,
New
yeah.
York, New York, 6 patients, sometimes 7. Florida, 7 is the norm.
Okay.
It could be, especially if you're in a unit that's like I was in a cardio unit. They come in, they get a pacemaker, they leave the next day, right? Or they
Mhm.
have a AFib ablation, they go the next day. So you have in the morning between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. you have to pass out all your meds, you have to do an assessment, you have to discharge half of your patients. 12, 1, they're coming back from the OR, you have new patients. So you could
Mhm.
have up to 12 different people as your patient for the 12-hour shift. It's just insane.
Yeah, that's a lot. Okay. So you're not even dealing with the same 5 or 6 people for that whole time. It's different people, admissions and discharges. That's heavy. That's definitely can be heavy. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, with those, now even in the height of the pandemic, in those states that you mentioned that had those legalized ratios, at any point did those ratios ever exceed the allowable amount? Because I mean, if you're talking
I
about,
was not there before the pandemic. So I mean, I was not there after the pandemic started, so I don't know.
oh, okay, got it. Yeah, because I realized too that, there may have been an issue with a lot of staffing for that. Obviously, if your hospital is overflowing with patients, then it would seem to me that they would have to increase those numbers at some point in order for everybody to have a nurse assigned to them. Every patient have a nurse assigned. But yeah, that's something I'm curious about. So if anybody, is watching this video, put it in the comments. Let us know if you've also traveled and experienced anything where, your assigned patients exceeded what the state may have allowed, and let us know how that worked out. Now, if you ever had any issues in terms of something going on in the unit, any kind of like difficult patient situations occur, any workplace violence issues, did you see a lot of that? Did you experience any of that?
Yes.
Thank
Yes, I
you.
have to say most units have fantastic managers. Either they have like the daily charge nurse that sits at the front desk and helps out the good ones. They actually really help out everywhere they can. Or there's a manager in an office where you can go to.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to say most places are great. If you have a problem, you get help.
Great.
If you don't find anybody, there's always the rapid response team. If it's, an urgent situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not a tiny, tiny little hospital out in the middle of nowhere, you have a rapid response team that can help you for any, nurses out there know what it is. So
Yeah, if it's a difficult situation, sure, with patient or family,
there's always
absolutely.
security you can call for violent
Mhm.
patients, etc., violent families.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because I see, different articles creeping up about, things going on in the hospital, either a patient or their family, somebody, looking to become violent or physical with the staff. And, that's always a risk given
It
these
happens. I mean,
overcrowded, tenuous situations. You never know how people are going to react. And I even know, there are some hospitals. I worked at one in New York where they allow visitors 24 hours a day. So it's like you have people coming in at night. Yeah, you have less staff and people are sleeping. It's not easy to keep track, who's in the facility at any given time, right? And what their intentions may be. So you have to be extra cautious.
oh, yeah.
Okay, so great. That was good. So now we're about to wrap things up, but my final question to you, Eliane, and thank you for being so candid with your responses, is what advice would you give for any nurse out there that is considering travel nursing as an option, even getting into it now that we've beyond the height of the pandemic? What would be the things that you would say to someone who was looking into this?
Well, just really, if it's something that interests you, definitely go for it. I think it's a wonderful experience. You know, um, if you're, as you said, somebody who needs stability and you know really is better at an environment that is not as fast changing, then probably not the field for you. But if you're open to experience new and different things and, you know, be able to adapt to new situations quickly, 100% go for it. It's a great, great opportunity, I think.
Mm-hmm. Anything particular you would advise on choosing a agency to work with? Because I know there are many out there, some better than others, obviously. I won't ask you to disclose your choice of agency, but when you were looking for an agency to work with, what are some of the things you considered when you made your choice?
You consider, the benefits. Some of them have way more benefits than others. Um, some of them you wouldn't think so, but some of most of them, they provide you with health insurance, dental, vision. Some of them don't. So you have to really make sure you read the fine print. Some of them have excellent staff that check in with you every week, and you can call them also. Besides, you said before, what if you have a problem in the hospital? Besides the manager in the unit or the charge nurse, you can always call your own agency because the person you're working with there is supposed to be your advocate. They're
Okay.
supposed to be your advocate and help you out in situations that you need help with. So, but certain agencies don't have staff, you know, it always depends. Some agencies have better staff than others. So I would suggest at least look at 5 different ones and see what they have to offer and how they operate, and then make the decision. Also, for you to know, or for everyone to know, you don't have to stick with the same agency. Let's say you want to go to Colorado. Colorado is very competitive because everyone wants to go there because it's nice in the summer or in the winter for skiing. So it's pretty competitive. The pay is lower because there's more people who want to go there. They don't have to pay as much to get staff. But if you really want to go there, you only have so many choices. Colorado is not a huge state, so there's only so many hospitals. And those hospitals are only covered by so many agencies. So there's, let's say the agency you want to work with doesn't have a contract in one of these hospitals. So then look at the agencies who do have the contracts and compare within those agencies. And then let's say next assignment, you want to go to California. You can switch the agency. You don't have to stick with them. You can jump from one to the next. Not that it's, you know, beneficial or not. I'm just saying you don't have to stay with the same.
Right. Yeah. And one more question I had about licensing. So when you do obtain the out-of-state licenses, let's say it's not a compact state with your individual licensing requirements, do those other states require you have a residence in that state in order to get their license? You know, like if you want to say beyond travel, let's say you want to stop traveling for a year and then maybe eventually pick it up again, you know, or not. You know, once you obtain those other state licenses, are you able to renew them and maintain them?
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a residence in that state to maintain those other licenses. Is that correct?
That's correct. No, you just have to pay their annual or biannual
Pay the
fee.
fees.
All
Okay.
about payments.
Well, I just applied for my compact license a few months ago, and because New Jersey just joined.
Yes.
No, I think last year. I think it was last year, and I didn't even know it. I just was randomly checking the site, and I noticed it that they finally did enact their legislation to be a compact state. And I was told it takes about 6 to 8 weeks, and they're not lying, because I think I applied in January and I haven't gotten anything back yet. And here we are about to end March. So I'm hoping that, you know, I'll get that response soon, but definitely, you know, I'll be looking into some warmer places.
Good.
Yeah, because, you know, I'm about this close to boycotting winter.
Good. I can
Yeah.
highly recommend it.
Great, great. Well, thanks again, Eliane. This was really a pleasure. I feel our audience have really gotten a very deep insight into the travel nursing experience from your perspective. Thank you for answering so many questions and giving us your honest feedback on each one. And, you know, again, thanks so much for your time today. I know you're busy, but it's always a pleasure to have you with us on the channel. And I would just invite our viewers and listeners to like, subscribe, and share this video. Again, we talked about travel nursing with Eliane, and this is definitely one you want to look at and maybe look at again. So thank you, everyone. And until next time, this is Tonya at Nurses Speak. Be well, take care of yourself, and let us know what you'd like to talk about next. Bye.